Hi, this video is going to explain the features of Assessment Task 1, which is a report discussing the connections between pedagogy and curriculum within the context of VCE Units 1 and 2. So the aim of this assessment is for you to become more familiar with theory and content surrounding the VCE within your specialisation. So the report is going to explore, as I said, VCE Units 1 and 2. The study design and curriculum associated with that, as well as any other VCEAA documents. So these other VCEAA documents are listed below. So the study design in your specialisation area, the bulletin, advice for teachers, the assessor's annual report, and the administrative handbook. So the report is going to be split into two sections. The first section is thinking about the student and their transition from middle years to VCE into Unit 1 and what that means for the student in terms of not only curriculum but the pedagogy. You need to think about the cognitive, the social, the emotional and the physical development of these students. Thinking about the differences of the middle years versus VCE student, the similarities of these two types of students, and what is needed in terms of catering for the various abilities. Okay, so it's moving from thinking about middle years, which you've already done, into, okay, so what is the VCE student and how are they different? What are their needs? You're going to unpack how these curriculum development and practice, making connections to the DEET teaching model as well as the VCEAA curriculum documents that I've mentioned before. Okay, so you need to think about how these documents apply to the VCE student, how they apply to the middle years student, and what's similar and what's different between them. Okay, so let's have a look at the documents. So under the Victorian Teaching and Learning Model, we have the practice principles, the pedagogical model, the high impact teaching strategies, and amplify student voice. Okay, so we want you to think about how the pedagogical model, which you've seen before, okay, thinking about the domains of engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. Link with the high impact teaching strategies and how that applies to the middle years versus the VCE student. So back to the assignment document. This is almost like an introduction to the next part, so the pedagogy behind the next part, which is focused on the curriculum. So you are going to have a look at the study design in your specialisation, focusing on Unit 1 and Unit 2. You're only looking at one specialisation area, but you're looking at both units. You are going to expand or outline and expand how you would teach the curriculum outcomes for Unit 1 and 2. So choosing an outcome, choose 2 key knowledge and associated skills to focus on, and using with the key knowledge as dot points, as headings, we want you to write a discussion on how you would teach each key knowledge dot point, substantiating your reasoning with appropriate readings, literature, government resources, VCEAA documents, etc. Okay, so what is this going to look like? We've given you an example of what you could use as a guide. You don't need to, but you could. So here we've got VCE biology. We've picked Unit 2 just to focus on. One area of study, outcome 1. The first key knowledge dot point is this one here. We've selected a key skill because within science it's not directly related to the outcomes. You need to think about how the key skills will fall throughout the unit. we've connected these two and we've said, all right, how would I teach the outcome? I'd start with a revision video, incorporating that somehow. We've substantiated briefly with literature why that's important. Here's a couple of more activities with dot points, and we've substantiated explaining why that is an engaging, important task. Same with the role play and Venn diagram, etc. Okay, so here's the second key knowledge, because you are required to do 2 dot points for Unit 1 and 2 dot points for Unit 2. So this is the second dot point in the key knowledge with a few key skills here. Examples of activities and substantiations of why these are important. Okay, so I suppose the key here is you need to be concise, use dot points wherever needed. You don't have that many words to describe what you're doing and substantiate why. So here it's all about making it clear what the task is and why it's important, why you've chosen it. So here is an example of Unit 2. You would do the same for Unit 1. So you choose an area of study in Unit 1, the outcome, and then 2 key knowledge dot points from that outcome. I'm sure you're well aware of your study design, but here's an example of the biology study design. So the first step, you need to think about which area of study you're going to focus on and which outcome. If I was to do outcome 1, I might choose this dot point and this one, and I'd only focus on those 2. Having a look at another outcome, I might do Unit 2, Area of Study 1, which I've done. I might focus on that one, and you'll notice that I didn't do the second one, but I focused on the third one because I thought that's a little bit more engaging. I can demonstrate more of my knowledge and understanding of the course content by choosing that one. So you don't have to choose the first 2, you can choose any 2 in that particular outcome. If I was to go to music, okay, I'm looking at music performance here, Unit 1. All right, I might choose the third area of study because, you know, it's all about music language, and maybe that is my area that I need to work on more than the others. So here we're recommending that you choose some units that you're not familiar with so that you become familiar with the content and the curriculum, which will make it easier in the long term when you start to teach. So back to the assignment document. The highest marks here are going to make clear connections between the first part of the report and the second. Okay, so when we're coming to read and mark, we're looking for connections that you are writing in your theory in the first section and how it actually applies in practice, so the second section. So what have you addressed in here in the first section? What have you found important? And is this reflected in the activities you've chosen for for section 2? So looking at the rubric now, you're going to be assessed on section 1 in these 2 criteria and section 2 in the second, the second section here. So in terms of your comparison and your contrast of the pedagogy and curriculum practices across middle years and VCE, you need to be comprehensive and insightful in your discussion. You've gone beyond the obvious and you're really thinking and unpacking the documents really well to go, okay, so how are middle year students different to VCE? How is the curriculum different? And therefore, how does my pedagogy need to reflect that difference? Okay, thinking about the different abilities of students, the different thinking skills, the headings of cognitive, social, emotional, and physical implications need to be discussed. The documents, the knowledge of the documents, so your command of expression and argument and structure within the first part of the report is fluid and outstanding. And then the second section is all about your understanding of the VCAA documents. So have you really got a good grasp on the study design? Have you considered what the examiner's report has discussed? Have you thought about differentiation practices and how to apply them within the constraints of the, VCE type curriculum? You've really thought about the usefulness and quality of each chosen task, and you've outlined clearly how to support or how it supports the VCE learner. And then lastly, again, you've really discussed the VCAA and the Department of Education and Training curriculum documents. Now, make sure that you include academic referencing throughout, okay, because you'll get quite a low mark for that. So just to recap, this assessment task has 2 sections. The first one is a focus on pedagogy, looking into the differences and similarities of middle year students and the transition they need to undertake in terms of moving to the VCE. And the second part is focusing on the curriculum, VCE Unit 1 and 2, choosing one area of study, one outcome, and outlining how you would teach, what activities you would include for 2 key knowledge dot points only, making sure that you make connections about how a key skill, associated key skill or skills are included, with substantiating your reasoning with readings and engaging resources.